What's up, everyone? Chef Dave back with another cooking video, and we are going down this soup avenue since that cold weather is really setting in. We got like an Arctic freeze coming, and today we're going to talk about one of my favorite soups, and that is Caldo Verde, which is a Portuguese soup that has, 4 or 5 different ingredients in it, and that's pretty much it. And then you can do a couple of different variables to it as well. But at its root is basically water, potatoes, onions, garlic, and collards traditionally, although I'm using kale today. And then you can either leave it as such. I've kept it vegan in many cases and garnished it with a little smoked paprika oil. Or you can go traditional and do some chouriça, some Portuguese sausage. And so we're going to do sort of both today, but we'll focus on the soup itself and then allow you to make your decision on the garnish. Very simple. It's a soup I grew up with, something I hold dear to my heart, but let's get into it. All right, so for this soup, pretty simple and straightforward, honestly. Okay, so we've got our foundation, stock cut onions. These are just onions that are just kind of very large diced. I call it stock cut. We got about 9 or 10 large cloves of garlic. We've got probably about 8 medium potatoes, and these aren't quite full, so I would say this is about 9 cups. I prefer Yukon gold potatoes or some kind of yellow potato. These are white because my store didn't have Yukons, but these will work. Anything that's nice and starchy. I like the Yukons because they bring a little natural sweetness as well. We've got our other foundational ingredients: olive oil, salt, pepper, obviously, and then we have this is a gallon bag stuffed with chiffonade kale, just thinly sliced kale. But just do it with a knife, just slice it very thin, and you're good to go. You'll see them. I'll open the bag later and you'll see it. And then for garnish, I've got actually a Portuguese sausage called a muro. This is a type of blood sausage in the sense that it is kind of traditional meat of like pork fat, bay leaf, wine, all that stuff, and then blood gets mixed into it. So it is more of a kind of a meat sausage than it is a blood sausage, but it does have blood in it, and that's why it's this color. This is all you need for the foundation of this super delicious, super simple soup. All right, let's start cooking. All right, we're going to place our nice big pot over high heat to start. We want it to get nice, and this is a nice heavy bottom, so we want this to really start heating up. We're going to put in here probably about a half a cup of olive oil. I like quite a bit of olive oil in this soup. It really is part of the foundational flavor of this soup. And this soup is vegan until you add the garnish. And I think it just kind of needs that fat, okay? And so a nice amount of olive oil, a half a cup, I think is ideal. You can do less if you like. That's totally fine. No problems there. And now as this is heating up, now for this soup, we're not looking for color, okay? We're just looking to sweat everything down, okay? So we don't have to let this get crazy hot. It'll just kind of start to sweat. So we're going to put our onions in there. We're going to put our whole garlic in there. Now leave the garlic whole because the more you cut garlic, the more it expresses itself in something. So when you want a kind of underlying garlic flavor, you leave the garlic more whole, okay? Now you can crush these, that's totally fine. I find that if you just cook them whole in this application, I think it's perfect. Okay, we're gonna put a little salt in there and some cracks of pepper. We can add a little more pepper later if we want. Obviously a little more salt later if we need. And we're just going to allow this to kind of sweat down. The salt will draw out the moisture, so it'll help it kind of sweat. Probably gonna do this for about 5 to 10 minutes, making sure that the heat isn't too high and it doesn't get any color on it. Okay, we'll bring you back. Okay, we're at about 8 minutes or so here. It's gonna probably need another 2 minutes, but you see what I'm saying, it's starting to get soft. This is very important, this step. You're sweating out, you're drawing out flavors without color, but it's, if you can smell the room right now, you're getting this kind of really melty onion flavor or aroma, I should say, and that's what you're looking for. And that step is hugely important, especially when you have something that's like low ingredient. It's very important that the technique that you use and the steps are really done well. So we're gonna let this go for another 2 minutes, get those flavors out, and then we're gonna add our other ingredients. All right, so we've hit the 10-minute mark. Again, you can see this is super nice and melty, right kind of where you want. If you wanted to go another minute or two, I think you could, but I think, you're starting to see the translucency on the onions. That's exactly what you're looking for. Okay, and now we're going to add our potato and our water. I like to err on the side of thick to start, because I can always thin it out, but you can't thicken it. So very important to not add too much water. We're going to just barely cover it. Perfect. Right there. We're going to bring this to a boil. Once we boil, we're going to drop it to low, cover it, and allow it to simmer until everything's very tender. All right, so I can hear it bubbling. So let's take a look. Yeah, perfect. We're just at about a full boil here. We're going to drop this down to low. We're going to keep this covered. We want to keep this steam that's rising in the soup, because that's kind of flavor. Flavor's rising. It's going to catch on the dome here and fall back down and recirculate all that really nice flavor. So we're going to leave that covered now for 30 minutes. All right, we are at 30 minutes now. Nice simmer. Yeah, everything looks super tender. The potatoes are falling apart. Onions are falling apart. It's exactly what we're looking for. Let's puree it. So just with an immersion blender, very simply, we're going to turn the heat off. And we're just going to puree it. And there you have it, nice and smooth. That's what you're looking for. Consistency might actually be okay. And this is why you don't put too much water, because you just never know. Very good. Needs just a touch of salt and I think a little bit more black pepper. Leave it on low, and we're just going to basically drop this all in there. Give it a stir, drop the rest. Now I don't cook this very long. This is one of those things where, like, as you heat up and reheat and as it sits, it's going to kind of keep cooking the soup or cooking the greens. And so I kind of like to let it, put it in and basically be done with it almost. And once we add all this, this might release a little bit of water as well, so we'll check the consistency again. And if I feel like it's a little thick, we can add a touch of water. We still have quite a bit of kale to add to it. Now you can add as little kale or as much kale as you want. I add quite a bit. I really want this to be a very kind of hearty, nutritious soup. So I add quite a bit of kale. Now just let that kale soften. I'm going to add a little bit of water to this, just to thin it out, just a hair. I think that's going to be right where we want it. We're going to put this on a little bit higher heat, just so, since we added that water, we're dropping the temperature down quite a bit, and obviously all that kale that we've added. I'm going to let this warm through and give it a little taste again. So it definitely needs, now that we've added all that kale, definitely needs more salt. The dilution is pretty heavy when you add so much kale. And there you have it, Caldo Verde. So while we wait for our soup to cook, we're going to prepare the sausage. Pretty simple. You want to cut this sausage pretty on a bias. Okay, so we're going to cut on this kind of extreme bias, and we want it to be pretty thin. Okay, just like that. Okay, and we're just going to cut a bunch of this up, and now we're not going to add this to the soup. We're going to, again, treat it more like a garnish. Okay, we're going to flambe these up a little bit. That is how you want that sausage cut. And you can see, now again, this is a type of blood sausage, right? So it's a little bit different, but it does have a lot more meat and fat in it. Okay, now for the sausage, you can do this a couple different ways. I'm going to try doing it kind of a semi-traditional way. I'm going to put it in a pan, lay it out a little bit. Okay. We're going to put just a tiny bit of olive oil over the top, just a tiny bit. And we're going to kind of sort of flambe this. Traditionally, you would use a little aguardiente. I have a little bit of gold rum. We're going to let that steam come, and then we're going to try to light it. See, there we go. Light it up. And now leave it on the heat because it's going to keep simmering. And that simmering is going to evaporate the alcohol, and that's what's going to flambe the sausage. And what you're doing here is you're just kind of giving it a little bit of a roast, and you're sauteing and rendering the sausage out. And what's going to get left behind is going to be this kind of roasty, rendered fat with the sausage. And you can use a little of that juice in the soup as well, which is great. And that's pretty much it. That's what you're left with. I'm going to leave this on high, let this juice kind of reduce, you know, because something like rum does have a lower ABV, so there's more liquid in it, water essentially, than it would be like a aquavit or a aguardiente. So there will be a little more juice left behind, so I'll actually reduce that down. But this is pretty much it. You're ready to use it. Here it is put together, the sausage, paprika oil, and the soup. Caldo Verde at its best. Absolutely delicious. And there you have it. Caldo Verde, green soup, one of Portugal's probably national dishes, I would call it. It's definitely a dish that I hold dear to my heart because I grew up with it. And it's very popular. Soups in general are very popular in Portugal, especially hearty soups. And I love this soup mostly because it is vegan at its base. And not that I'm like a big advocate for vegan food, but it's delicious in its vegan form, just like that lentil soup is. And I really love that about this soup. Now, I'm a sucker for pork, obviously, so I'm going to add all this sausage to it. That's just how I like it. But don't forget, you've also got this beautiful smoked oil that you can add to it and keep it vegetarian. You have options, okay? Thanks for joining me, everyone. If you're enjoying this content, make sure you comment, like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and Chef Dave will see you on the next one. Peace.